यह घोटाला 7 करोड़ से लेकर 200 करोड़ रुपए तक का हो सकता है। Let's look at the hard facts. Every single one of these 6 MPs won their seats by actively defeating BJP and Shinde-led Sena candidates. It is an easy photo op in a country where the entire education system is actively failing its youth. नमस्कार, आज स्ट्रेट टॉक विद पीसी में एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट मुद्दा जो भगवान श्री राम से जुड़ा हुआ है, हमारी आस्था से जुड़ा हुआ है, हमारी भक्ति से जुड़ा हुआ है, और जब उसके साथ विश्वासघात होता है तो हर सनातनी को इस पे आवाज उठानी चाहिए। नमस्ते, मैं प्रियंका चतुर्वेदी और आज बात होगी बिना किसी लाग लपेट के सीधी बात यानी स्ट्रेट टॉक विद पीसी। आज इस देश के करोड़ों सनातनी ठगा हुआ महसूस कर रहे हैं उस राम मंदिर के नाम पर, जिसके लिए देश की जनता ने अपनी गाढ़ी कमाई का एक एक रुपया दान कर दिया। वहां हुआ क्या है? जिस प्रभु राम को हम मर्यादा का प्रतीक मानते हैं, उनके ही दरबार में आस्था की सबसे बड़ी डकैती डाल दी गई है। और सबसे शर्मनाक बात जानते हैं क्या है? जो राजनीतिक दल प्रभु राम के नाम पर वोट मांगकर सत्ता की मलाई चाट रहा है, उसकी नाक के नीचे करोड़ों रुपयों का घोटाला हो गया और उनको पता भी नहीं चला, या पता था और चुप रहे और आंखें मूंद ली। वोट चाहिए राम के नाम पर, और जब दान की रक्षा की बात आई तो आंखें मूंद ली। मीडिया चैनल्स भी इस पर ज्यादा चर्चा नहीं कर रहे हैं। मैं पूछना चाहती हूँ क्यों? यह भारतीय जनता पार्टी की सरकार का वो पाखंड है जिसे आज पूरा देश देख रहा है, चाहे टेलीविजन चैनल्स उस पर चर्चा करें या ना करें। आइए आपको तथ्यों और जो एसआईटी की रिपोर्ट के माध्यम से कुछ खबरें आ रही हैं और जो आंकड़े बता रहे हैं वे उसके बारे में थोड़ा संज्ञान देती हूँ। यह सिर्फ कोई छोटा मोटा हेरफेर नहीं है। शुरुआती अनुमानों के मुताबिक यह घोटाला 7 करोड़ से लेकर 200 करोड़ रुपए तक का हो सकता है। जो कर्मचारी महज 18 से 20 हजार रुपए महीने की सैलरी पर रखे गए थे, वे अचानक अयोध्या में 40 लाख से लेकर 1.5 करोड़ रुपए की जमीनों के मालिक बन गए हैं। एसआईटी की टीम ने अब तक करीब 2 करोड़ रुपए कैश, गाड़ियां और आईफोन्स बरामद किए हैं। पैसे ये जब रेड पड़ी, पता है कहां से मिले? आप हैरान हो जाएंगे। आरोपी लवकुश मिश्रा के घर अलमारी और उनके गाय के गोबर के नीचे छिपाकर रखे गए लाखों रुपए बरामद हुए। जरा नाम सुनते हैं उन लोगों का जो इस पवित्र दान की गिनती करने के लिए बिठाए गए थे, जिम्मेदारी दी गई थी, और जिन्होंने वहां गिद्धों की तरह दान पे नजरें गड़ा रखी। मैं नहीं मानती हूं इससे बड़ा कोई और महापाप हो सकता है। एसआईटी ने जिन आरोपियों से पैसे बरामद किए हैं और जिन पर शिकंजा कसा है, उनके नाम हैं लवकुश मिश्रा, जिनके घर की गाय के गोबर से पैसा मिला है, अवनीश, अनुकल्प मिश्रा, करुणेश और रामशंकर उर्फ टीनू यादव। ये वो लोग हैं जो सीधे तौर पर नोटों की गिनती के नाम में शामिल थे। सिर्फ यही नहीं, मंदिर के सेवादार कृष्णा देव तिवारी की भूमिका भी जांच के दायरे में है, जिनके ऊपर बेहद कीमती आभूषणों और चांदी की ईंटों को गायब होने को लेकर सवाल उठ रहे हैं। ये भी कहा जा रहा है भगवान श्री राम की माला जो है वो भी गायब है और उनके चरण पादुका भी गायब है। ट्रस्ट के अधिकारी गोपाल राव के भतीजे सोमेश आनंद का फोन स्विच ऑफ है और वो भी फरार है। और इस चोरी का अंजाम कैसे दिया गया? एक सोची समझी साजिश के तहत ही, कोई छोटी चोरी नहीं है, साजिश है। एसआईटी की जांच कहती है कि जहां पैसों की गिनती होती थी वहां सीसीटीवी कैमरों के साथ छेड़छाड़ की गई। जानबूझकर ऐसे ब्लाइंड स्पॉट्स बनाए गए ताकि कैमरों की नजर से बचकर भगवान के पैसों पर डाका डाला जा सके। सोचिए, जब 2025 में महाकुंभ के दौरान देश के कोने कोने से हर दिन 10 लाख श्रद्धालु आ रहे थे, अपनी आस्था से गुल्लक भर रहे थे, तब ये लोग अयोध्या में कैमरे घुमाकर भगवान का माल साफ कर रहे थे। बुलडोजर नीति का ढिंडोरा पीटने वाली सरकार के राज में राम लल्ला के घर में ही इतनी बड़ी सेंध लग गई और आप अनजान रहे। आज देश की जनता पूछ रही है और कह रही है, हे राम, ये कैसा राज है? चुनाव जीतने के लिए तो आपने हर मंच से जय श्री राम के नारे लगाए, हर पोस्टर पर राम मंदिर की फोटो छापी, लेकिन जब उसी मंदिर के खजाने के लुटेरों से बचाने की बात आई तो आपकी सरकार और आपकी प्रशासन सोता रहा। क्या इसी राम राज्य का वादा आपने जनता से किया था? आज ही के अखबार में एक रिपोर्ट आई है जो बताती है कि एक ऑडिट फर्म ने कहा था, 2020 में कहा था कि यहाँ पे बहुत सारे लूपहोल्स हैं और उसको पुख्ता करना जरूरी है। एक एसओपी भी दिया था, पर उन्होंने उसकी भी अनदेखी कर दी। विपक्ष के नेता अखिलेश यादव जी सुप्रीम कोर्ट की निगरानी में जांच की मांग कर रहे हैं। क्योंकि वो जानते हैं इस पाखंडी सरकार की बनाई हुई एसआईटी पर अब जनता का भरोसा नहीं रहा। इस देश के हर उस गरीब माँ बाप को जवाब दीजिए जिसने अपनी बेटियों की शादी का पैसा काटकर राम मंदिर को भेजा था। उस बुजुर्ग को जवाब दीजिए जिसने अपने पेंशन का हिस्सा प्रभु श्री राम के चरणों में डाला था। लाखों करोड़ों अनगिनत हमारे श्रद्धालु भक्त जो कोने कोने से देश भर से आए थे, उनको आप जवाब दीजिए। यह सिर्फ पैसों की चोरी नहीं है, यह सनातन धर्म की आत्मा और करोड़ों भारतीयों के विश्वास के साथ विश्वासघात हुआ है। उनका कत्ल हुआ है उसके विश्वास का। अगर मंदिर के पहरेदार ही लुटेरे बन जाएं, तो फिर न्याय की उम्मीद किससे की जाए। मैं इस पर चुप नहीं रहूंगी और ना देशवासियों को चुप रहना चाहिए, क्योंकि जब तक ये गुनहगार जेल की सलाखों के पीछे नहीं पहुंचे, तब तक इसकी आवाज होती रहनी चाहिए, आवाज उठती रहनी चाहिए और धर्म के नाम पे किया हुआ ये महापाप को सजा मिलनी जरूरी है। और भगवान श्री राम के मंदिर में उनकी आस्था के साथ, हमारी आस्थाओं के साथ, भक्तों के लाखों करोड़ों भक्तों की आस्था के साथ जो घिनौना मजाक हुआ है, उस पे कार्रवाई होनी चाहिए। In my straight talk with PC, week on week, I have been talking about the students and the harassment they face, the mental harassment that has happened because of re-examination, NEET re-examination. Lots of students have committed suicide rather than give a re-examination. Now let's look at the timeline that feels more like a military operation than a medical entrance exam. On June 21st, India conducted the massive re-NEET exam for over 20 lakh students after the initial May 3rd test was cancelled due to a widespread question leak. There has been massive outrage, there has been massive questioning of the government. The government has totally stayed silent, the education minister has not stepped down. The government went all out. They had the Indian Air Force airlifting question papers, central forces guarding the centers, and they even temporarily blocked a major messaging app nationwide, Telegram. But despite a hyper-secure environment, did we completely fix the system? Or did we just replace old scandals with logistics failure and heartbreak? Let's talk straight and let's understand what really ails our education system and our central examinations that are conducted. First, let's talk about the online battlefield. In an unprecedented move, the government temporarily restricted access to Telegram across India leading up to the exams. It wasn't just restricted to those 20 lakh students who are appearing, but across the country, there's a temporary access which was restricted. Why? Because the NTA claimed organized cheating networks and digital mafias were using the app to trap desperate students. Now, for a minute, anyone in their right minds would ask, why not take action about the digital mafia and the cheating networks, which after an investigation is pretty obvious where it's coming from. But yet we chose an app to ban. Scamsters were using names like Paper Leaked NEET and trying to sell fake question papers for lakhs of rupees. Again, not going after those who are selling these fake question papers, but going after an app. The NTA also pointed out that the fraudsters used Telegram's edit feature to modify old posts after the fact was revealed, making it look like the paper leaked before the exam when it hadn't. Telegram's CEO, Pavel Durov, fought back, calling the ban a mistake that punished millions of innocent users in India. The NTA stands by its claims that the retest was error-free, but it shows just how vulnerable the system remains to the internet's dark corners, and the mafia continues to exist through these dark corners. But while the online space was heavily guarded, physical logistics saw bizarre complications. Take the case of Abdullah Muhammad Talib from Nagpur. He was preparing for his re-NEET and 48 hours before the exam, he downloaded his admit card, only to find his center was allotted at Indian school in Abu Dhabi. He didn't even have a passport, and yet he was given that center. The NTA claimed its database logs showed someone manually altering the location using the candidate's account, while the family has vehemently denied it. But because it led to such an outrage, the NTA stepped in and at the last minute gave him a center from his city in Nagpur. But not every student got a happy ending. Across the country, we saw several videos and there were several visuals of students who were denied entry for being late by just mere minutes. I do understand timelines exist and I do understand that they need to be adhered to. Despite parents weeping and pleading at the gates, the strict deadlines were enforced. And it was ensured that those who did not make it on time were not allowed and were barred from giving the exams. And this brings us to an incredible contrast in how political optics operate versus real world accountability. So on Sunday, Prime Minister Modi, because it was the Yoga Day as well, and he had gone to West Bengal, Kolkata, for the Yoga Day celebrations. Prime Minister Modi landed at the Delhi airport at 1:15 p.m. Because the NEET exam was starting at 2 p.m., we were told the Prime Minister chose to wait inside the airport for 45 minutes. The narrative, which is all across the media, all across the supporters, and some journalists breaking that story, that he did not want his heavy security convoy to block traffic and delay students. On paper, it sounds like a very thoughtful leader putting students first. But let's cut through the spin and talk straight. Waiting 45 minutes at an airport is a mere token gesture. You know it, I know it. It is an easy photo op in a country where the entire education system is actively failing its youth. Where was this urgent concern for students over the last several months? Why has the top leadership been absolutely silent and completely utterly silent on the actual paper leaks that ruined the futures of millions of students who are appearing for this re-NEET exams? Some of them don't live amongst us anymore because they chose to end their lives. Why is there zero accountability demanded from the education minister? And most heartbreakingly, where is the national empathy for the devastating string of student suicides driven by the sheer despair of this broken, corrupt system? The tough questions need to be asked. A delayed convoy doesn't fix a leaked exam. An airport wait doesn't bring back the lives lost to exam pressure and the systemic failure that we have been seeing repeatedly. We can airlift papers, we can ban apps, and we can stop traffic for 45 minutes. But until our leaders show real courage of conviction, take actual accountability, and completely overhaul the way this toxic testing infrastructure has been created, these gestures will mean almost and absolutely nothing. The students don't need a polite pause in traffic. They need a system they can actually trust and depend on. They need a system which is transparent. They need a system which is honest to their challenges. So today let's talk about how different global leaders handle the unpredictable, often bruising style of US President Donald Trump. And his blunt talk and his blunt posts on Truth Social also get people talking. Just days ago, Trump publicly claimed that Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni begged him for a photo op at the G7 summit in France, which was attended even by Prime Minister Modi. Did she ignore it? Absolutely not. Meloni immediately fired back on video, calling the story completely fabricated and stating bluntly, "Neither I nor Italy ever beg." She even hit him, probably where it hurts the most, publicly criticizing Trump for being too accommodating with the West's actual enemies.
Dunque, certe cose meritano una risposta immediata. Le dichiarazioni di Donald Trump sono dichiarazioni totalmente inventate, sono francamente allibita, non so perché il Presidente degli Stati Uniti si comporti così con i propri alleati, non è del resto la prima volta che accade, posso solo dire che dispiace che non abbia la stessa determinazione con i nemici dell'Occidente, con i nemici degli Stati Uniti, con leadership con le quali invece si dimostra molto più accondiscendente, però una cosa se la deve ricordare, io e l'Italia non imploriamo mai.
That is how Rome handles Washington, a public, unyielding pushback. But now let's contrast that with New Delhi. During the recent face-to-face bilateral meeting in France, Prime Minister Modi raised the issue of safety of seafarers killed during the military crossfire. When it came to taking questions from the press, with Prime Minister Modi by his side, Trump was specifically asked about his response on the death of 3 Indian sailors by the US Navy. He practically shrugged it off. Yes, no apology, no regret, and he casually went on to call seafaring a rough profession. And he said, these kind of incidents have been happening throughout time.
But there is also a tragic loss of lives of Indian sailors recently, sir, in American strikes. Any words of condolences for the grieving families, sir?
Yeah, I do. I heard about that. It's a rough profession. There's no question about it. And we work together on it. This has been happening throughout time, but we work together on it. Yeah, certainly. We love all of those people. They're great people. Yeah, please.
While Prime Minister Modi stayed silent, not even a statement after hearing Trump reply. On the other hand, Melanie draws a sharp line in the sand. India continues to play the long, quiet game of strategic patience. The question is, when does quiet diplomacy start looking like a lack of assertion? While the leaders argue about optics, the real world consequences of American foreign policy are fracturing in real time. And that is something we really need to look at. For weeks, the White House has been pushing hard for a definitive US-Iran peace deal to halt regional escalation. High-level diplomatic teams, including US Vice President J.D. Vance, were literally on standby to head to a peace summit in Switzerland. The MOU signed by Trump at the G7 saw Iran walking away with an upper hand in the negotiation which was happening between Iran and US, with a $300 billion commitment from US for reparations, continued administration of Strait of Hormuz, agreement on further discussion of issue of nuclear enrichment. Pakistan once again ensured humiliation of US under the garb of the MOU. But as we speak, those highly anticipated talks were facing hiccups and jitters. Why? Because while Washington talks about peace, its closest regional ally, Israel, has continued a relentless punishing bombing campaign in south of Lebanon and Beirut. The Iranians drew a hard line, suspending the exchange of text messages and warning that they will not sign a single piece of paper while Lebanon is under siege. Trump's Washington is trying to sell a peace deal to the world while proving entirely unable or unwilling to restrain its own partners from pulling the trigger on the ground. And finally, let's look at how Washington truly views our region. Right in the middle of these tense back-channel US-Iran negotiations mediated by Pakistan, J.D. Vance dropped a viral line that left diplomats quite stunned. While he was talking to the reporters, he joked to reporters that the two most important people in his life right now are an Indian and a Pakistani. The Indian being his wife, Usha Vance. The Pakistani, well, Pakistan's army chief and their newly minted Field Marshal Asim Munir, whom Vance heavily praised for his behind-the-scenes statesmanship. It was meant to be a light-hearted joke, but let's talk straight. It tells you everything about the current Washington mindset. To the US establishment, India, while being a strategic partner, it is a massive economic marketplace for them. But when it comes to geopolitical muscle, intelligence sharing, and military mediation in the Middle East, Washington is still dependent on Pakistani military apparatus. The same apparatus which has been found lacking on several fronts, right from controlling terror to it helping shield Osama bin Laden in its own territory in Abbottabad. Maybe US memory is short, but Indian memory is elephantine. And as of date, its biggest embarrassment is the Memorandum of Understanding between Iran and US. India doesn't build its strategy on Washington personalities anymore. But as Vance openly praises Rawalpindi's generals, while Trump dismisses the lives of Indian sailors as just a rough profession, which has been happening over the years, incidents happening over the years, New Delhi needs to wake up. The US will always look out for its own immediate transactional benefits. India, and what do you think India should be doing? Is India's quiet diplomacy working, or do we need to start pushing back with the fire of a Georgia Melanie? Now from the US-Iran war, let's talk about my state Maharashtra, where politics has mutated into a full-time corporate reality show, or maybe the Bigg Boss show. After 2022, Shiv Sena UBT has fractured yet again. Out of the 9 Lok Sabha MPs, 6 Rimmel members have officially jumped the ship to Eknath Shinde's faction. Devendra Fadnavis ji, just before the start of the monsoon session in Maharashtra Assembly, called it a highly successful Operation Tiger, while Deputy Chief Minister Shinde smiled and teased that this is just the trailer, the real movie is yet to come. But let's talk straight. Is this a political operation, or is it a calculated post-mortem of our democracy? This isn't just the collapse of a political party, it is the utter destruction of public trust. when the electorate votes for a specific individual under a party symbol, only to watch the elected representatives switch within 24 hours, the voter is left completely cheated. Is there even a shred of intent left to serve the people? Or has our politics devolved into a raw, shameless display of money and power? Let's deep dive into the raw data and the mechanics of the split. So here are the rebel 6 MPs and the reasons that they have stated. I will begin with Om Prakash Raje Nimbalkar. He's from Dharashiv. He said development funds have been blocked. He needs to help people of his constituency, which was getting difficult as an opposition MP. Nagesh Patil Ashtikar, constituency Hingoli, same stated development stalled since sitting in opposition. Now to the Mumbai MP from Northeast, Sanjay Dina Patil, shifted camps. No one knows the reason why though. Maybe power hungry. While daughter continues to represent SSUBT. What a joke. By the way, it was his election in which he had made me hit out strongly at Eknath Shinde and his son Shrikant Shinde, which led to much outrage in the state and abuse for me from the women leaders, which continues off and on even till date. While Mr. Patil will now be seated with the same people. That is politics of Maharashtra. And let me tell you, it's not just for beginners. The fourth, Sanjay Haribau Jadhav from Parbhani, cited again the local development funds as a reason to switch. 5. Sanjay Deshmukh, Yavatmal Vashim, aligned with power to protect his political base, and again the same reason, not enough funds. 6. Bhau Sahib Rajaram Vakchore, Shirdi, again the same reason, safe electoral future and development funds. What is the defense all of them are collectively offering? They claim that joining the ruling dispensation is an absolute necessity for local development, arguing that nothing gets done from the opposition benches. Really? So if you sit in the opposition, you simply fold your hands and stop working. Is this a legitimate defense or is it a blatant admission of opportunistic guilt? Let's look at the hard facts. Every single one of these 6 MPs won their seats by actively defeating BJP and Shinde-led Sena candidates. The citizens, when they came out to vote, chose them specifically to stand against the ruling establishment. Yet today, they are rushing into the arms of the very establishment they fought against. Unchecked money power, timely legal acquittals, and pure opportunism have combined to make a complete mockery of the public mandate. Now let's look at the legal and constitutional mechanics of this move. India has a dedicated mechanism designed to stop this exact behavior, getting voted from one party, moving to another, which is the anti-defection law. Under the 10th schedule, it was enacted specifically to prevent horse trading and stop politicians from switching parties like seasonal clothes. But our politicians have learned, especially under the BJP, have learned how to weaponize the law against itself. Look at the mathematical precision here. Shiv Sena UBT had exactly 9 Lok Sabha MPs. 2/3 of 9 is mathematically and precisely 6. The Shinde camp engineered the poaching of exactly 6 MPs to achieve immunity. They don't stand to be disqualified by the virtue of 2/3. While they're technically safe from being disqualified, is there even an ounce of moral legitimacy left? Legally, a faction cannot simply switch sides without a formal merger of the original party. But when the ruling apparatus and the speaker's chair are on your side, with all due respect to the chair, rules bend. Constitutional loopholes are being actively exploited to choke out the will of the voter. That is the straight talk. If every election is going to end with a bidding war for MPs and MLAs, why even waste thousands of crores of public money on holding elections at all? We might as well replace polling booths with corporate auctions every 5 years, when financial muscle and political pressure completely override ideological alignment. Democracy becomes a farce. Let's have a bidding competition, whichever is the biggest sellout. Today, the average voter in Maharashtra feels entirely irrelevant because the ink on their finger carries absolutely no value. Parties are engineered to split, constitutional protections are bypassed, and political morality is as good as dead. If these defectors have any real courage, and if they had shown any real courage, they should have resigned, stepped down, and faced the electorate again under the new banner and explained their reasons. But they won't do that because deep down, they're terrified of the wrath of the public anger. What do you think? Will the voters of Maharashtra penalize this shameless opportunism in 2029 elections, or has money completely broken the system? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. It will be interesting to know what the general sentiment of this entire optics of opportunism looks like. Thank you so much for joining in and looking forward to see you next week.